We'll see that the first chapter was an introduction to public speaking, talked about the benefits of it, communication models, different information to keep in mind. Chapter 2 is more of a historical perspective, the origins of public speaking, and Chapter 3 talks to us about ethics and the importance of ethics in public speaking. So that is a little recap of what each chapter is about. As we go into Chapter 1, we see that it touches upon 3 benefits of public speaking. So public speaking benefits you in your personal life when you have special events, in your professional life, and 70% involves public speaking when you work, and in the public forum, being informed, knowing what's going on in our democracy, and so it builds that aspect. So here are 3 benefits of public speaking, and this is from Chapter 1, Introduction to Public Speaking. Then it presents to us 2 models of communication. The first model is linear model of communication, where it's more of a one-way process. And you have the sender, the channel, and the receiver. The channel is how you send the message, face-to-face or through, computer mediated, such as, Skype or different things like that. And then it evolves from the linear to the transactional model. And the transactional model has more elements to it. Encoding is creating a message. Decoding is deconstructing the message and assigning meaning to it. The communicator is yourself and those that are involved in a communication event. Feedback is what you get when you send a message, and it could be verbal or nonverbal. Message is what you construct, the actual words, such as this lecture on chapters 1, 2, and 3. And channel is how you send it, face-to-face, or it can be computer mediated. Noise is anything that interrupts a message from getting from person A to person B. And it could be physical noise, like there's noise outside of your office, outside of the classroom, or it could be psychological, you're hungry, you're tired. So all that, it interrupts from you listening to a message that's being sent to you. So that is noise. And there are different examples of noise in the textbook. Worldview is the overall framework through which an individual sees, thinks about, and interprets and interacts with the world. And so this impacts each of these elements in the communication model, right? It impacts how we decode a message, how we encode a message, and so the worldview is an important component. These words are elements that impact worldview, right? So epistemology, the way in which we acquire knowledge, right? Ontology refers to our belief system, how we see the nature of reality, what is true or false. Axiology is our value system, our sense of right and wrong, good and bad, fair and unfair. So you can see how that impacts the worldview, right? And how that impacts how we communicate with each other in those communication models, right? Cosmology represents the way that we see our relationship to the universe. Praxology reflects our preferred method of completing everyday tasks and our approach to problem solving, right? So those are different elements that impact worldview, which is an element of a communication model. And those communication models help us construct messages and communicate with each other. And it's an important aspect of public speaking. Okay. So then it also talks about the types of speeches. So we have speeches to inform, persuade, or entertain. And those are, well, when you commemorate or entertain special occasion speeches, such as when you're having a toast at a wedding, you're having a commencement speech at graduation, so those things like that. When you create your speech, whether it be informative, persuasive, or to entertain, special occasion, you want to have a useful topic, right? You want to have an engaging introduction. Your ideas are well supported in your body, and you have closure in your conclusion. So when you're doing your type of speech, it has 3 main areas. It has your introduction, it has your body, and it has your conclusion. And each of these areas makes an effective and strong speech. So, chapter 1, what it did for us was introduce to us public speaking. It talked about the benefits of public speaking, communication models. It talked about the different aspects of communication models and the different types of speeches that we're going to be seeing throughout the course. Chapter 2 is about more of a historical perspective, right? And so it goes back into the art of public speaking and how it originated from the Greeks. And so it was first practiced long before the Greeks wrote about it, but the Greeks were the first to systematize it. So that means systematize it means to normalize it, to use it in everyday life. And so they were the first to do that with public speaking. And they called it rhetoric. Rhetoric, as we go into it, it's more of persuasive in nature, rhetoric. And so we're going to go ahead and go into that a little bit. So in this chapter, chapter 2, I didn't put everything in the chapter because it does, go into Draco, Aristotle, a lot of different important orators or figures that impacted public speaking. And you'll see that when you do your summary, you'll see those different contributions from different individuals and different movements as well. Okay. But these are just the main points of the chapter. So it talks about the rise of democracy and how Aristotle defined rhetoric as the faculty of discovering in the particular case all the available means of persuasion. So as I said, it's primarily a means to persuade is how we look at rhetoric. And so society relied on other forms of oral expression. So we talked about the 3 types of speeches in chapter 1. So the ability to inform, speeches to praise or blame, epidictic speeches, and those are the special occasion speeches again. And also the chapter mentions Aristotle's 3 proofs. When we do, for example, a persuasive speech, we do touch upon ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is the credibility of a speaker, the believability of a speaker. Pathos is the emotional components that we use in our speeches. And logos are the facts, the evidence. And so when we do speeches, we rely on those 3. And so this came also from the origins of public speaking, a historical perspective. So then chapter 1 introduced to us public speaking. Chapter 2 was more of a historical perspective, and I just put the highlights, the main points. It goes into different orators that had impact on public speaking, different movements as well. But you'll be doing that in the activity, and you'll see more of the chapter. So then chapter 3 talks to us about ethics and public speaking. It defines ethics as knowing the difference between what we have a right to do and what is right to do. It is related to issues of honesty, integrity, and morality in everyday life. You want to avoid plagiarism and make sure to cite the works of other people. And that applies, of course, to all the speeches and all the work done in the class. And so we use APA format in this class. And here's a link to OWL Purdue. And OWL Purdue is a university online writing lab. And it has that credibility to help with APA. When you are using research from other people, or whether you're taking a direct quote or you're paraphrasing is putting other people's words into your own words. And so you always want to give credit where credit is due. And then it talks about different types of plagiarism. So global, presenting a speech that is not your own speech. A patchwork, copying, changing words, altering sentences to patch bits of information together or paraphrasing. Incremental, failing to give credit for quotes or phrases as part of your speech. So you want to make sure that you speak ethically and honestly about works, words, and ideas that are from others. Okay? So different types of plagiarism. So then it also talks about ethical listening and ethical feedback. Ethical listeners interpret material, analyze content, and the speaker's effectiveness. Ethical feedback is descriptive and explanatory response to the speaker. So in ethical feedback, you're using constructive criticism. And I use that as an instructor when I give you feedback on your speeches. So I always start out with what you did well and what you were strong in, and then you go into areas that you can strengthen and improve on to build your public speaking. So that constructive criticism is ethical feedback because it's going to strengthen your public speaking. So we see these different terms in the chapter. So then, as we go into finishing here the main points of each chapter, I had said chapter 1 was an introduction to public speaking, chapter 2 was a historical perspective, and chapter 3 was about ethics. Okay, and so we want to remember these main points in the chapter, right? And if you have any questions, reach out to me and let me know.